latest from Steven Spielberg, which has elicited outraged reactions on both sides of the political spectrum. I mean, I know of two people. One person I know who saw it was absolutely shocked by it and said that as far as they were concerned it was an argument for state terrorism, and he was then shocked to discover that somebody else had thought it was profoundly anti-Israeli and was somehow an apology for Palestinian terrorism. So it's on both sides, and I think that's a good thing. It's a fictional, factual, inspired by real events, the real events being the appalling events of the 1972 Olympics, in which a number of Israeli athletes were killed, and the story posits a hit squad sent out, a state-sanctioned hit squad sent out, led by Eric Bana, to track down and kill the people responsible for that terrorist activity. The lead of them is Eric Bana, who I think is a very, very good actor. I liked him very much in Chopper. Of course, oddly enough, he was a stand-up comedian before he ever made Chopper.
Did you like him in Hulk?
Not really, but then that's not entirely his fault. I mean, I liked him, but Hulk is, the great phrase about Hulk is, you won't like me if I'm Ang Lee. You wouldn't like me if I'm Oh, never mind. Insert your own laugh track here, guys. So,
not on the basis of that, I won't.
It's a good joke. That joke is copyright Alan Frank at the Star. I think so. Anyway, firstly, as far as the political stuff is concerned, it is, in my opinion, extremely balanced. And I think both sides of the fence who've been saying it's outrageous this way, are completely wrong. In fact, if anything, it's balanced to the point of tedium. So, basically, the message of the film, and this is important because people have written an awful lot about what the film does or doesn't say. The message of the film is perfectly clear. The message of the film is violence begets violence. Terrorism is awful in all its forms. However it manifests, it is awful. And during the course of the movie, the Eric Bana character, who starts out as a family man and is clearly sympathetic, goes through a series of assassinations during which he wonders more and more about the justification for his activities, and more about the terrible destructive things that are happening in his own life as a result of them. Now, I think that's a perfectly, if slightly trite, and I have to say fairly, I would have thought, obvious point of view. It's very, very balanced. So let's have no more of this, political shenanigans, people complaining that it says one thing and it doesn't.
Some of the political outrage, as I understand it, is the fact that Spielberg might have suggested that there's somehow moral equivalence between the terrorists on the one hand and a state trying to get revenge on the terrorists on the other.
Yes, well, what he says is that if you go out to commit a bunch of assassinations, assassinating people is not a good answer to any problem. And I mean, if that's nothing new. I mean, I've seen many B movies which have said exactly the same thing. The difference is that they've said it in 95 minutes as opposed to Spielberg, who, as ever, decides that he cannot do anything short. In the same way that Jaws is a better film than Schindler's List, War of the Worlds is a better film than Munich, because for me, Spielberg is best when he's selling the popcorn, because he's a really, really good popcorn filmmaker. I don't have any problem with Munich politically. I think on a performance level, there are actually many, many good things about it. Eric Bana, as I said before, I think is a real good actor. But I think that when Spielberg takes himself seriously, he just gets bogged down. And he gets bogged down partly because he doesn't know whether what he's making is a thriller or a lecture. So what you get is action sequences with talking in between. Politically, I understand why that's necessary. And he has committed no crime politically. He has, in my opinion, fallen short of the mark on an entertainment basis. And I really do think that, for me, Munich is a fairly mediocre political thriller with none of the cutting edge of what I would say is a great political thriller, like, for example, The French Connection, which I think is much closer in getting to that, we're all on two sides of the same coin and there's a very thin line between lawfulness and lawlessness. I mean, to me, that's a much edgier movie. I think if the stink hadn't happened, people would be able to see it for what it is, which is an earnest and well-meaning, if slightly dull, inspired by real events thriller. It's not one of his worst movies, it's not one of his best movies, and it ain't War of the Worlds, and it's certainly not Jaws.